Last week, I spoke with a daughter sitting in the car in the parking lot of her mom's senior living community. She wasn't scrolling her phone. She wasn't taking a call. She was just sitting there crying because she didn't want to go inside. Not because she didn't love her mom, but because every visit ended in criticism, accusations, or emotional exhaustion. She finally said something I hear more often than you might think. I love her, but I just don't like who she's become. If you've ever felt that tension, loving someone deeply while struggling with who they are right now, then this episode is for you.
Welcome to Senior Living Moments with Nancy Nelson. With 45 years of connecting with seniors, 2 decades of award-winning experience in assisted living, and a heart full of compassion, Nancy brings you stories that resonate and insights that empower. Get ready for real conversations, practical wisdom, and heartfelt humor to help you and your loved ones navigate the journey of seasoned adulthood with confidence and grace. And now, here's Nancy.
We'd like to thank Belmont Village Senior Living for sponsoring today's episode. Belmont Village is nationally recognized for its clinical expertise, particularly in memory care and cognitive health. Their highly trained nurses, caregivers, and wellness teams work around the clock to support residents with dignity and respect. Families often choose Belmont Village because they want both compassionate care and clinical confidence. Learn more about their approach at belmontvillage.com. Okay, I want to talk today about something many families struggle with but don't always talk about openly. Dealing with a difficult parent or spouse in their later years. Over the years, I've cared for many residents who challenged us in ways that were emotional and exhausting and sometimes heartbreaking. I remember Mary, who moved into our community in the late stages of dementia. She would have sudden moments of rage that seemed to come out of nowhere. She might turn around and punch whoever was standing closest to her. She would bang on doors and windows and pulled the fire alarm at least 3 times. The amazing thing is that she had once been an executive director in a senior living herself, proof that life is not always fair. Caring for Mary felt like a 22-hour job. She only slept a couple hours a night. It felt like kind of a negative Groundhog Day over and over. Then there was Judy. Judy didn't have a diagnosis of cognitive disease. She was simply very unhappy in the later years of her life. She argued about everything, even the weather. She complained about every meal placed in front of her. She would bluntly tell people that they weren't welcome at the table, or they would say cruel things to people in the hallway. Caregivers sometimes became afraid to enter her room, and sadly, her family had to step back because being around her became emotionally unhealthy for them. And I'll be honest, sometimes I am still puzzled by what makes some people become more difficult as they age. I've seen previously positive people become bitter. I've also seen people who were estranged from their families for years become these sweet, quiet, and loving people in the final season of their life. We do know that many factors can influence personality and behavior in later years, like disease progression, certain types of dementia, the fear of losing control, loneliness, unresolved pain, bitterness, medication effects, and so much more. But today, I want to focus less on the why this happens and more on how we respond when it does. Because at some point, we have to accept that anger, screaming, resisting care, crying, or constant calling out may become a part of their journey and also part of our journey alongside of them. Many psychologists will say, separate the person from their behavior. That's really good advice, but I know it can be incredibly hard when the person is your parent or your spouse. When someone has dementia like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, a brain injury, the challenging behavior is not the person you know and love. It's the disease expressing itself. Sometimes when I'm working with someone who's yelling or distressed, I try really hard to just look directly into their eyes and mentally look past the disease. I try to see the person still inside. I also remind myself, you are the thermostat in the room. If you stay calm and centered and kind and grounded, they often begin to mirror that emotional temperature. We know that humans mirror each other. Just like yawns are contagious, calmness can be contagious too. Focus on emotion, not logic. When someone is upset, logic rarely helps. In fact, logic often makes things worse. If you've ever told somebody you're just being emotional, you know that rarely leads to peace. It usually leads to defensiveness. Instead of reacting to words or behavior, look for the emotion underneath what they're saying. If a parent says, "Get out of my apartment, I don't want you here," the emotion is obviously anger. The family could respond back, Dad, it's Bob. I can see that you're angry. I arrived later than you expected, and that's upsetting to you, and I am so sorry, Dad." If they say, "You never visit me, ever, you never come," that emotion might be sadness or loneliness. A family could respond, "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry that you feel sad and that you're even showing like you're lonely. You know, it has been over a week since I've been able to come, and I miss you too. I'm so glad we're together right now." If they say, "You're stealing all my money," that emotion might be fear or frustration. A family could respond, "Oh, I see how frustrating it is when other people have access to your hard-earned money. You worked hard for that, and we just don't want anybody to needlessly waste it or spend it. We're going to try to help protect your money for you." When we respond to the emotion first, they feel heard. And when people feel heard, they often calm down enough to move forward. Then you have to look for the unmet need, because behind almost every challenging behavior is an unmet need. I remember Jocelyn, who had late-stage Alzheimer's, and she became aggressive during showers. She would hit and kick and resist the caregiver's attempt to give her a shower. One time when I entered the room, I could see that Jocelyn was terrified and angry. When I spoke with her, she said, "I don't even know who these people are, and they tried to take off my clothes." To her, this wasn't hygiene care. It was the loss of control and the loss of dignity. Eventually, we learned she had a childhood trauma and extreme modesty needs. Once we adjusted our approach, like we reintroduced ourselves every time we came in. We let her remove as many clothes as she could and held a big towel curtain up for her modesty. We let her wash the body parts she could, and if she was willing to let one of us help, we would do it gently, kind of reaching behind the towel and patiently. The behavior wasn't the problem. The unmet need was. Sometimes the unmet need is dignity. Sometimes it's control. Sometimes it's reassurance. Sometimes it's loneliness. We have to figure out the unmet need before we can care for our loved one. And then we must redefine what being a good child means. Sometimes we make caregiving harder on ourselves because of our own unrealistic expectations. You cannot force someone to be happy. You cannot force someone to be grateful. You cannot fix another human being as hard as we try. You can only show up with compassion. Shorter, more frequent visits are sometimes better than long emotional visits. If interactions are triggering strong negative emotions even in you, it's okay to step back for a season. Loving someone from a distance can still be love. Also, choose a different time of the day to visit. Late afternoons, when people with dementia often sundown and struggle, might not be the best time. Maybe an early morning visit on your way to work might be better. If you feel sometimes like you're never enough, please hear this. Those feelings are real, but they are not truth. You are enough. They may simply have a disease that cannot be fixed. Here are two truths I just want to close with. Caregiving is not about fixing someone, and caregiving is about showing compassion. That's all it is. Caring for a difficult loved one is not a failure of love. In many ways, it's proof of love.